I got back from my open-ended solo road trip around the South Island of New Zealand. And a couple of years ago I did a 3-week trip around the North Island as well. So this video is meant to be a bit of a budget, itinerary and travel and cost breakdown and everything in between. So when the country opens back up again, or if you're just a local wanting to be a tourist in your own country, there's a little bucket list of places for you to go and also ideas on how much things are going to cost. So both the trips I've done, including the most recent one, I have done on a pretty low budget, I would say. I've been everywhere in the country except for Northland. The main thing that will differentiate between some of my costs and what you might be looking at is the fact that I didn't hire a campervan. It costs anywhere from 1.8 grand to 2 grand to hire a campervan for a similar amount of time. So all these costs from my trip are solo ones, but the main things you're going to be looking at is things like insurance and travel, which will be costs that you'll be looking into yourself. And then you'll have your campervan costs, which like I said are probably going to be about 1.8 to 2 grand if you did the same time period as I did. And then outside of that you have petrol, which is really expensive in the country at the moment. Generally though you're looking at paying anywhere from maybe 110 to 160 for a full tank, depending on the price of petrol and how much your car takes. And then you have your food costs. The easiest way to save money on a long trip is to plan ahead with your groceries. Go to Pack and Save when you're in all the big cities and buy lots of groceries. Stock up on easy things like rice and oats and whatnot, and try not to eat out quite as often, although I know that is a thing that the millennials and the Gen Zs and whatever other generations there are that exist do like to do, but it is a great way to save money. Not to say you shouldn't eat out at all, there's some very good restaurants in this country and takeaway places that are not McDonald's or KFC. An easy way to save money is to hire a campervan instead of a car. Essentially you're looking at anywhere from 80 really cheap to very expensive for a hotel per night. So if you are wanting to do a big road trip on a budget, definitely look at hiring one of those camper vans. So the differentiation between camper vans in New Zealand is that we have what we call self-contained vehicles and then we just have regular vehicles. So a self-contained vehicle essentially enables you to camp in any self-contained vehicle camping sites. The majority of these, well actually I probably think all of them, are free and it's a great way to save money. Other options are the dock campsites, which are about $8 per night. They're not usually in places like big cities, but there are always lots around, especially out in the less popular places, and there tend to be some reasonably close to the major cities. Dock campsites are meant to be $8 per person per night for an adult. Upon saying that, it is an honesty donation and people go either way with deciding to be honest or dishonest. And then you also have local council sites, freedom camping ones, which can be for non-self-contained vehicles as well, but usually is self-contained vehicles for the majority of campsites. Your absolute lifesaver on the road will be downloading the apps Campermate and Rankers Camping. These have the lists of every single holiday park, freedom camping site, dock sites around the whole country. They're so useful and they have different colours based on the price range of the places. So other than the freedom camping and the dock sites that I've mentioned, there are holiday parks. These can be in the middle of nowhere or they can be your chance to find some nice accommodation in the big cities. Generally they'll be pretty basic facilities and will go from anywhere from $15 to $25 per person per night, and there's definitely a bit of variation around the quality of these places, and it is just dependent on where you're going, and you don't have to go to these sorts of places often if you're wanting to do the trip on a budget, but it can be nice to stay in a holiday park sometimes. And outside of that you will have your discretionary spending. So in total my 7-week trip cost me around 3.2 grand. It probably was a bit more than that, but also I was travelling by myself, and many of these costs, such as petrol and food, would have been split with another person. So realistically, you can probably also do it a lot cheaper than that, but to me I thought that was reasonably good for 7 weeks on the road plus some nice discretionary spending. My main recommendation is that when you're travelling around, don't set out too specific a plan, because some people on the road that I met virtually just drove places and then had to continue on, and they did everything to a really tight time frame. And whilst there's nothing wrong with that, if that is what you want to do, I do think it's a lot better to pay that extra bit of money to hire a camper van or a vehicle for a bit longer and spend more time at places and take it a bit slower on the road, because a major cost is petrol, and if you're staying at places longer, you're getting more for your money's worth realistically. Looking at where you want to go is very interest dependent. So if you're a big skier, you're going to spend quite a lot of time in places like Wanaka and Queenstown, compared to someone who might be a really big surfer and would like going to the Coromandel up in the North Island. Essentially, the main summary of it is that the North Island is far more populated and doesn't tend to offer as much unless you're really big on beaches, if I'm being very honest. Not to say that the North Island doesn't have its perks, but the majority of people do come to New Zealand for the South Island, and most New Zealanders will also agree with you that the South Island is somewhat better. My main sort of recommendations for activities, which is what I'll break it down to first, is that you definitely want to get out there and do some walks or even a big day or multi-day hike. New Zealand is known for its hiking, and don't be surprised if someone calls it tramping. It is not an offensive term, it's the term we tend to use rather than hiking. There are loads of great day walks in the country and some epic multi-day ones. The majority of local trampers here will tell you that the great walks aren't necessarily all that great. They're all absolutely stunning, but they're far from the best that New Zealand has to offer realistically, and there are many tracks out there which are better than the great walks, or just as good, or good in different ways. However, as someone who has spent a lot of time in the outdoors, it is definitely a fair point to make that a lot of tourists who do come here severely underestimate the risks of doing long day or multi-day hikes. A lot of the great walks will have guides, and there are also a lot of operating companies to take people on walks, but it is just something to keep in mind if it's something you're looking at doing in your personal time. A big recommendation is also to get out there and do some things like sea kayaking, which is popular in Kaikoura, Cathedral Cove and Milford Sound, to name a few of the top ones. And things like, if you're wanting to go and get a bit of an adrenaline rush, going whitewater rafting is a great thing to do. If you're wanting some good excitement, go to the Kaituna River in Rotorua, or alternatively Tongariro in the North Island. And then in the South Island, my recommendations would be the Buller River, which is in Murchison, going far south places like the Shotover and the Rangitata. Or alternatively, if you're wanting a multi-day trip, go to the Clarence River, which takes around 4 days or so and is absolutely stunning. Looking for surfing, there are beaches all over New Zealand, although places like the Coromandel are known for their beaches. Dunedin is also a great surf location, as is Kaikoura. The West Coast also has some amazing stuff to offer. You also have the Taranaki Surf Highway and Raglan, although the places I've heard where locals are the least friendly are Raglan and Lyell Bay in Wellington, so maybe don't go to those places as much. So essentially I'm going to iterate some of my favourite places in the country as someone who's been most of the places around, and why I like these places, and then from there I suppose you can pick what you are interested in yourself. But as someone who has grown up here and been everywhere, I definitely have a good idea of what some of the amazing places to visit are. So I'm going to go from north to south. So the first one on my list is going to be Great Barrier Island, which is off the coast of Auckland. It is a tiny little place with great surf beaches. I have done a 3-day sea kayaking trip around the northern end of Great Barrier Island, and it was absolutely stunning. It's a dark sky sanctuary and there are just surf beaches upon surf beaches. It's very different to the rest of New Zealand, and It's just a very calming place overall. And just a brief note on Auckland, some of my favourite things in Auckland is the ice cream place Taupo, which is very good. Rangitoto Island, which is actually a volcano and you can take a little ferry out there. What else is there in Auckland? If you like shopping, go to Sylvia Park, and there's another mall out in Albany as well, which would be worthwhile checking out. Auckland is the only city in the country with a population over 1 million. I think it's more pushing about 1.6 now, so it is a bit of a metropolis, which some people have said has similarities to Australia. Moving down from there a bit, you have the Coromandel, which is absolutely gorgeous. You've got beaches galore and you've got lots of cool different ecological features, which sound boring when I say it like that, but if you drive around there you'll find it is pretty beautiful. A classic Kiwi summer mission as well is to go and walk up Mount Maunganui. Personally, I don't think Mount Maunganui is that nice. I do think it's overpopulated, but if you want the view and to say you've done it, it is a place to go. Moving down from there, you have Taranaki. Checking out the surf highway is obviously a big one if you're a surfer, but if you like some hikes, or Mount Taranaki is beautiful to look at because it is a giant, perfectly circular volcano and there is no other mountains around it, and it is absolutely wonderful. There's a great story if you go to Tongariro and you go rafting there that you will hear about how Taranaki fought with the mountains in Tongariro, namely Ngarahoe, Tongariro and Ruapehu, and ended up trying to drown himself in the sea, and he didn't quite make it, which is why he's so close to the coast and away from all the other mountains, and why there's a river that links the two, which he left in his wake. Tongariro is definitely a beautiful area. Driving along the desert road through the middle of the country is a pretty cool experience in itself realistically. Personally, I'm not super big on the Hawke's Bay Gisborne region, but there are definitely things to check out there if you are so inclined. Going out to Lake Waikiramawana and the Ruru rock slide, I believe it's called, can be something to look into as well. Moving further down, you come to Wellington. You probably do want to check out Te Papa, which is the National Museum. If you are big on Lord of the Rings, Rivendell is out at Kaitoki Regional Park, which is a pretty beautiful place. And there are loads. If you're into coffee, craft beer, ice cream or peanut butter, go to Wellington. I think we have more cafes per, it's either people or square kilometre than New York does, which I found pretty impressive. I'm probably going to talk shortly about the South Island because to me, I think the South Island where you want to go is very specific depending on your interests. The majority of people aren't going to want to go far south, which is a little unfortunate because there is some beautiful stuff down there, and taking a trip out to Stewart Island is well worthwhile if you're wanting to do that. But the South Island is such an interest dependent thing, so I'm going to talk about it from a scenery point of view. My favourite area in the whole South Island is definitely what you call Mackenzie country, which is kind of the region around Mount Cook and Lake Pukaki, Lake Tekapo, Lake Ohau, down through to Wanaka, Queenstown, Lake Hawea sort of region. Through there the scenery is absolutely stunning. Making the trip up to Mount Cook and walking up to Hooker Lake / Glacier is well worthwhile. It is absolutely stunning. So beautiful. My favourite place in the whole country. Besides that, you've got Fiordland, and to me personally, I think that a lot of people go to Milford Sound and then they fall asleep on the bus ride on the way home. To me, Milford Sound is not the highlight. The drive there and some of the walks off their main road are actually far better than Milford Sound itself, which probably isn't a very popular held opinion, but I definitely believe it to be true. The driving through there is absolutely phenomenal. There are lots of dock campsites along the way. Tiana and the Kepler track are pretty beautiful as well, heading back out from there. Dunedin is great if you're a surfer. There are definitely some nice wee bakeries there. I have my favourite bakery, the Tartan, and also a wee bookstore called the Dead Souls Bookshop, which has old covers completely covering the ceiling. Other than that, I don't like Dunedin. Christchurch, unfortunately, to me still has a bit of an odd vibe after the earthquake, even though I think it is around a decade ago now. So to me, Christchurch is a bit of an odd place. Coming from outside, though, you might not think that. It's definitely still worthwhile a visit. I am a big West Coast person. I lived there for a year. Most people say it has absolutely nothing to do, which is totally true, unless you're big on the outdoors. Going through to Arthur's Pass as well is a pretty epic place if you're wanting to go for some good hikes. And the West Coast has some really cool surfing. It has the Punakaiki, or Pancake Rocks. Pukiki. Other than that, my main notes are to not feed kia. Even if you see one, you don't feed it. It's not good for them. They're already endangered and they're the world's only alpine parrot, and they are cool and they are smart. But essentially, make sure you do your research. There is obviously loads of information out there on what to do and where to go. So make sure you go to the Fairlie Bakehouse if you're going through Mackenzie country. There is nothing else in Fairlie, but that bakehouse there does the best pies in the whole country. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and always make sure that you are prepared when you go into the outdoors, because all of New Zealand is outdoors. Sure.